Glinka's Ruslan and Ludmilla, which has nothing to do with what we're about to present to you. We just like to play that, so we did it. So I'm going to talk to you about an American trombone icon, Mr. Arthur Pryor. He lived from 1870 to 1942. And I'm going to read something that was written about him. His execution set the prairies afire. Its vibrating pedal tones rattled the windows of the theater and killed the goldfish, stunned the canaries all the way out to the packing plant where even the iron gates trembled. So said a newspaper reporter in Omaha. A reporter in Kansas City reported that a riot was almost caused when cries for Pryor, Pryor, Pryor were mistaken for fire, fire, fire. And so this is how it went for years when the superstar performed all over the world. He was referred to as the Paganini of trombone, and it's estimated that he performed over 10,000 times all over the world, as I mentioned. And it really is, it's a great story, a great American story of a man who built his career on his love of the trombone, music, and his understanding of the music industry. In common terms, he was a pop star. And there's a lot we could talk about, but we'd be here for hours if I went into all the tangents of, how many college students we have? Raise your hand if you ever did a research paper. So you know what I'm talking about. You start looking at something, you really have to keep it focused. So I'm going to breeze through a lot of things. So I'm going to skip about 20, 30 years. But he was discovered by John Philip Sousa. I love this picture of Sousa, by the way. And he was a featured soloist with the Sousa band and ended up being second in command. Here's the letter that Sousa wrote. This is funny. It says, "My dear sir, your name is given to me as a competent performer on trombone. Will you kindly inform me whether you'd be willing to engage in my new Marine band, and if so, at what salary?" So he got to pick a salary. So it's a nice piece of history right there. One of his earliest compositions, one of his early solo compositions, was Thoughts of Love. And who's played that? Okay. So this pretty much launched his career in Sousa's band. And he composed it for himself. He composed all the solos for himself because there were no solos that were written for him, because nobody was soloing like that we know of. He believed that soloists should compose their own solos to showcase their own talents. After all, who would know better someone's strengths and weaknesses than themselves? So what's interesting about Arthur Pryor is he's a composer of a distinct body of solo literature, specifically for the trombone, that's retained its popularity throughout the years. It's still published, it's available today, it's performed all over the place, 100 years later, which is pretty astounding. So here's our first solo composition, and a lot of you recognize this, right? And here's Thoughts of Love. Arthur Pryor changed the way, in his day, the way musicians, composers, and the public felt about the trombone. And to show this, we can look at some reviews written about a performance of the very solo I just played, Thoughts of Love. Here's the Birmingham Post. A trombone solo of Thoughts of Love, contributed by Mr. Arthur Pryor, was an achievement quite unique. The player realized a tone quality which no other soloist on that instrument has ever produced. And yet, in a way of rapid scale passages, his performance was especially astonishing. So pretty strong words. And here's another paper. His execution savors of the marvelous. It was almost too much to believe that such a pure and exquisitely beautiful tone could be produced on an instrument whose usual characteristics are aggressive. His solos are not profound in the sense of musical substance, but they're very serious in their approach to the trombone. They're very lyrical, and the technical capabilities, of course. And there really are no novelty Pryor trombone solos full of smears like Lasse's trombone and things like that. He treated the instrument with great respect. And Thoughts of Love was performed by Pryor with the Sousa Band in 1893, 11 years before it was published. And the theory here is that he didn't rush to publish the solos because he didn't think that anybody could play them. Which is probably true at the time. He had a unique ability to combine elements of the classical world, technique, with elements of popular music, simple melody, and the result is music that virtually anybody could enjoy. So, and then he would incorporate other elements in the solos, like you just heard, ornamentations, the bending of the times, wild cadenzas and variations and such. The form of his solos is kind of interesting. They're usually always A, B, C, D, A, and it's very similar to the march form, which was made popular by Sousa and him, and Scott Joplin and alike during that time period. The main difference being that in Pryor's solo, he liked to bring back the main theme in the end for some wild variations. Harmonically, this solo just starts in B flat, goes to E flat, goes to A flat, and then back to B flat. Like most of his works, it's mostly diatonic. It's really about the playing, which makes it special. So in addition, we're going to jump around a little bit with his compositions. And in addition, obviously, to being a solo composer, he wrote marches and rags and things like that. So we're going to move on to another tune now. This is, I guess, a march, we'll call it. Change the slide. And this is a tune called The Whistler and His Dog. So this is probably his most known tune of his day. It was used for a theme song for movies, radio shows, commercials, for bands. In fact, one of his sons, Ray Pryor, who was an actor, he was in over 70 films. If you Google his name, you'll recognize him as a character actor. He was also a trombone player, and he had a big band, and this was his theme song. So it's a fun-natured tune. And the title, as you can see, the picture, it captures the innocence of a boy looking for his dog. And at the end, he whistles for his dog, and the dog barks and it appears. That's what we're going to do. And the whistling and barking is done by the band and the audience. And the marketing for this picture, it's all the charm of a Norman Rockwell painting, I think. Let me change the slide. So when he had a tune that did well, he would write about them in magazines, so they would be performed properly by the bands that would buy them. So here's one of the articles in the Metronome. And I'll go to the next slide. And on the top right there is the actual article about the Whistler's Dog. So here's some notes about this tune. First thing it says, for dance, even tempo. And this comment referring to dance tells us that people dance to this. So this was music for dance function, which meant it was the center of social functions, which is pretty big in the music business. So people were dancing to this and listening to it. And then it says for concert, retard in measures 3 and 4, blah, 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 measure 16, moderato. It goes on and explains how to do it. I'll jump down to the interesting part. And the DC for the pause is pause for 50 seconds in Dakota. Don't follow the whistle, that's somebody's phone. Don't follow the whistle as written. Expect the audience to whistle and bark with the band. So the melody is usually whistled, but I'll play it for you the first time, and then we're all going to whistle it when we play it again. And fortunately, we have a master whistler in the band, Master Sergeant Bingham, right here. In addition to playing trumpet, he's a great whistler. He'll be our lead whistler. And on the sheet music, here's a tuba part, and if you can see on the bottom there, it says, bark through your instrument like a large dog. So I guess the tuba was kind of like an amplification. They were barking there. So let me read for you the advertisement from Carl Fisher about this tune as they would market band leaders. Pardon our enthusiasm about Pryor as a whistler and his dog. There are plenty of reasons for our joy. If ever there was a novelty composition inclined to be a popular craze, this is it. Band leaders can't imagine not having it. It leaves the audience applauding, wanting more. The whole audience will whistle it with you. The melody is so catchy, you can't lose it. Everybody likes it. Everybody wants it. Try it and make it the hit of your life. So apparently it was quite popular and requested by band leaders everywhere. However, Pryor grew tired of it and actually composed a companion piece titled Sammy and His Missouri Mule. He said in a 1941 interview that he did not keep a copy of The Whistler at home, but that he still liked it, but he was embarrassed by it a little bit. So that comment tells me that perhaps because he was such a serious player, maybe he wanted to be known for his solo compositions and his more serious works and his playing rather than this novelty tune that he wrote. But it's a beautiful tune, as you'll see, and he had a gift for melody. He also said he wrote it as a memorial to his boyhood pet bulldog named Roxy. He was a dog lover and always had dogs throughout his life. So the tune was very personal to him. And this tune did sweep the nation. It did more to spread the name of Pryor than anything else. And it was mentioned in his obituary. And his obituary went worldwide. Not many people's obituaries go worldwide. And his did. So today, this is kind of cool. We have from the Army Band, right here. This is one of the early publications that we had in the library. It has a number 300 on it. 382. We have probably over 3,000 marches in the library, and the back is stamped the Army Band, the Army War College. This is when the band wasn't even here. We were across the river, I believe. And any historians here? Anyway, that's another tangent I mentioned. We're just going to leave that. But this is one of the original Crawfisher. This is one of the pieces of music that was marketed and purchased by the Army Band back in the day, probably the same time that was written. So we're going to move on, and we're going to play. We have to rehearse the ending first because you guys are going to participate. We're going to play the very ending for you. It's going to sound like this: bug it up, bug it up, bug it up, bug it up, and then we're going to whistle, and then we're going to do a drum roll. Then we're all going to bark like dogs, and then we're going to end it. Okay? And I guess there's a story too that at one concert the whistling went on for a very long time outside, and the dog actually appeared. So whether that's true or not, I don't know, but it makes a great story, right? So let's rehearse. We'll play. Okay, then we'll whistle. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Now we all whistle for the dog. Drum roll. We bark like dogs. Okay. So like I said, I'll play the melody the very first time, but then you're gonna have to whistle it. You get to hear it. It's a catchy melody. I think you'll hear it. 1, 2, 3. Moving back to his solo compositions, this is one of his better known ones. Who's played the Fantastic Polka? Okay. So I apologize now for the way I'm about to play it. This is one of probably his last compositions, perhaps, at least for solo it is. It was written in 1939. And like his other solos, it's very diatonic. However, it's very different in the way the melody moves around, and it is a polka style, of course. Harmonically, it's the same thing. We start in B flat, go to F, go to E flat, and then back to B flat, and then we have a wild dog fight type ending. And of his 15 solos, this is a culmination of all that solo work that he did, and of course he wrote this for himself. So it's interesting because when he played his other solos and compare it to Bluebells and things like that, this is a very refined solo in terms of composition for the horn. So this is Fantastic Polka, and let's do it. Arthur Pryor was about 3 years younger than Scott Joplin, and he certainly would have come in contact with him in his travels in the music circuit. And he was also raised in St. Joseph, Missouri, a frontier town not far from where Scott Joplin lived for some time. So when Pryor was in Sousa's band, incidentally, I forgot to put this picture up while I was playing the last tune. That's just a scene from a concert. Isn't that amazing? It's just a wonderful picture. So when he was in Sousa's band, Pryor was known for his ability to play and write and his liking of ragtime. So it was his job in Sousa's band to teach the members of the band how to play ragtime. And when the recording industry came out, let's skip a slide here. When the recording industry was born, Sousa didn't like it. He didn't like the technology because he knew it would replace live music, and of course he was right. Pryor, on the other hand, saw it as an opportunity. He was a visionary. He embraced it, and as Sousa's assistant conductor, he actually directed and conducted a lot of those Victor record recordings of the Sousa band. And eventually, Pryor would be employed by Victor Records as a producer and a conductor. If you ever go to a concert over at the Marine Band Barracks here, you can see one of those original wax discs. It's in the display in the lobby there. It's a pretty cool piece of history. It looks like a peanut butter jar, but it's a wax disc. But it's kind of neat. So eventually Pryor would leave Sousa's band, start his own band, of course, but they kept a working professional relationship. And while the Sousa band continued to travel and perform all over the world and did some recordings, the Pryor band would spend most of its time in the studio and would end up having a greater influence worldwide than Sousa. So for 25 years, Pryor was on staff at Victor with hundreds of singles. It's amazing. And his ragtime recordings were the most popular and introduced ragtime to many people and really bridged the gap between march music, ragtime, and of course led the way for jazz. Dixieland came out of that. So many of his rags are recorded. He recorded more rags than any other band leader. It's amazing. So he took ragtime and put march music together and made what we refer to as a ragtime march. And this next tune we're going to play is Razaza Mazaza, and it was marketed as the king of rags. And like I mentioned earlier about the business of music, every band in America, every town in America had a band or bands. And here's a little personal history here. This is the Fullerton band. This is a suburb of Allentown. And on the upper right, on the far right, the guy holding the euphonium, that's my great uncle Al. And he played in the Fullerton band. And the story I was told is that he survived World War I, came home, and unfortunately was mugged and murdered. And so sorry, Al. But anyway, that's my great uncle Al, and he played euphonium. And I found that out after I was playing euphonium in middle school. My mom came out showing, hey, my dad came out, this is my uncle Al. He played euphonium too. I was like, that's kind of weird. But little family history there. So let's play Razaza Mazaza. performance in Leipzig, Germany, before an audience of an estimated 25,000 people, Pryor received a tremendous ovation. And during the intermission, members of the Gewandhaus Symphony Orchestra came backstage to disassemble his trombone and inspect it, questioning how anyone could achieve technique on the trombone such as Pryor without the benefit of some mechanical aid. They thought it was Yankee trickery, tomfoolery, hijinks. The only thing they noticed that was unusual was that Pryor's horn had a very small bore. In fact, a .458. So there's trumpets that are bigger than that, bore-wise, and a small bell. So very interesting. This trombone is that I just played, of course, you know, is much larger than that. It's large. It's a big bore, referred to by trombone players. And the other horn over there, which I'll play in a minute, that's a small bore horn. That's a .458 bore, which is still bigger than what Pryor played. And according to Steve Dillon, is Mr. Dillon here? Mr. Dillon's not here. Steve Dillon, by the way, is an expert on Arthur Pryor, and he actually owns Arthur Pryor's trombone. And I spoke to him about it, and it is a .458 bore. And it's for sale for $250,000. So trombone players can afford that, right? So it was a custom trombone horn built for Mr. Pryor in Elkhart. That's where that trombone on the end there was built too, and much smaller than anything available, of course. So this is kind of important when you try to understand Arthur Pryor and the way he played and what people talked about him. You know, you have to understand in his day there weren't big sound systems everywhere he went, clip-on mics, and playing outside for 20,000 people. You know, you don't have these stadium sound systems. So, you know, what kind of trombone, what kind of horn is going to cut across the field? You know, a small bore, you know. So there's your Yankee trickery. You know, it's just American engineering, American know-how. So he had the right equipment to get the job done. And, you know, since the end of his time, trombones have been getting bigger and bigger, especially in the classical world. And in the commercial world, they pretty much have remained small bore. And this is where the divide in the trombone world really started. And to this day, you still get comments, you know, that refer to the small horn as a pea shooter. Oh, it's a pea shooter. You know, so easy. You can show me how easy it is. You know, so you know, you get comments like that, and it's kind of strange. I don't understand that mentality, but you know, what's cool about the trombone is we have so many different sounds, colors. If you were here last night, you heard all these different soloists with all these different sounds. You know, Sly Hampton plays a huge trombone. You know, he sounds wonderful. And other people play small trombones, and it sounds great. So, you know, that's just the way, that's what he did. And, you know, Arthur Pryor influenced a whole generation of trombone players. And probably the next person he handed the gauntlet to was Tommy Dorsey, right? And of course, he was famous for getting Sentimental Over You. He played this beautiful lyrical solo on that, just like Arthur Pryor would. So he was very influential. He influences us to this day. And just an amazing history with this man and his legacy, which lives today. So this last solo I'm going to do, if I don't pass out, is the tour de force of his solos. It's the Bluebells of Scotland. And who's played that? Okay. So this is the solo that is on a lot of auditions. And it scares a lot of people away because it's ridiculous. It's funny because I was getting my music together and I was like, I'm looking for the Bluebells. Where's Bluebells? I was like, I've had it memorized for years. So I had no music for that. But this is the solo that won me the job in the Brass Quintet. So it's a special solo for me. It was on the audition list. Those guys, these jerks, put on the list. So it's you know, this is the solo that a lot of trombone players work on when they're young, and you still keep working. I still work on it as much as I can. So thank you very much, and I'm going to close with Bluebells of Scotland.